May 1939 not only gave us the first appearance of Batman at DC Comics, but we also received two other new debuting #1 series. Keen Comics #1, May 1939, published by Centaur Publications. This was Centaur's latest series. Features Dan Hastings, the Big Top, Bob Phantom the Magician, and the Mad Goddess. There's a Max Neal cover. And Fred Gardenier artwork is featured in this book. Overstreet notes that this book was large size, as it was an oversized book format. Gerber had a white space for this book in the Photojournal Guide of Comics, with a scarcity index of 9, showing how scarce it was. The on-sale date of this book was March 18th, 1939, and the cover features clowns and a man dressed in a cow costume. The big new #1 book of the month, Wonder Comics #1, May 1939, published by Fox Comics. This is the comic that caused a lawsuit and is a very significant, desirable comic book. The only appearance of Wonder Man, and this comic is ranked among the 50 most valuable comic books of all time by the Overstreet Price Guide. And it is possibly one of the 5 scarcest books in the top 50. And the cover image is by Will Eisner. The folks at DC did not enjoy this new comic. Within days, they sought an injunction prohibiting further publication of a character that they deemed a Superman ripoff. A judge granted the injunction, noting, "Infringement has been shown both textually and pictorially. Wonder Man never appeared again." It's been noted that DC's successful copyright infringement challenge was doubly significant as it set a precedent for the similar dispute regarding Fawcett's Captain Marvel, which wasn't settled until years later. There's an Allentown pedigree copy of this key book. Wonder Man is a fictional superhero created by American cartoonist Will Eisner, whose first and only appearance was in this comic book, Wonder Comics #1. The character is of some historical importance due to the lawsuit. Wonder Man's secret identity is Fred Carson. During an excursion to Tibet, an old monk bestows Carson with a ring that gave him the powers to fight evil when the need arose. His powers are almost exactly like those of Superman. Wonder Man was created by Will Eisner in the Eisner-Iger shop for Victor Fox, who was publishing astrology magazines when he ran across his distributor's reports on the incredible sales for national periodicals Action Comics in February 1939. He immediately decided to get into the comic book business, setting up offices in the same building DC had theirs, then contacting Will Eisner. Using the pen name Willis, Eisner wrote and drew the first issue of Wonder Comics, which appeared on the newsstands less than 6 weeks later. In March 1939, DC Comics brought a copyright infringement lawsuit against Fox due to the character's similarities to Superman, as well as story and illustration elements that were similar to previous Superman adventures. The case was brought to court in Detective Comics versus Bruins Publications, Inc., in which Eisner defended the originality of his creation. Despite this testimony, the subsequent decision forced Fox to drop the character after just 1 issue. The on-sale date of Wonder Comics #1 was March 17, 1939. This comic features work by Bob Kane the same month that he debuted his latest character, Batman, in Detective Comics for the competing publisher, DC Comics. Wonder Man is featured on the cover in this early superhero cover drawn by Will Eisner. And the Wonder Man story runs 14 pages, written and drawn by Will Eisner under the alias Irwin Willis. This early superhero story features the first appearance, introduction, and origin of Fred Carson, who is Wonder Man. Fred Carson, timid radio engineer and inventor, was given a ring by an old Tibetan, which makes him impervious and the strongest man on Earth. His boss asks him to accompany his daughter Brenda as she joins the Red Cross to help in a foreign war. When they arrive, the base comes under attack. Carson becomes Wonder Man, defends the base, puts an end to the war, and feeds the populace. Also in this issue, we get Shorty Shortcake, an 8-page strip written and drawn by Jerry Iger under the alias Jerry Williams, in this humorous story featuring the first appearances of Shorty Shortcake, Susie, and Skippy. Patty O'Day is a 4-page story drawn by Adolphe Barrault in this adventure strip featuring the first appearances of Patty O'Day, Ham, and Lord Michael Farnsworth. And this would later be reprinted in Rex Dexter of Mars #1 from Fox Comics in 1940. Buffalo Bill, Men Who Made the West is a 2-page text article written and drawn by Will Eisner featuring the classic William F. Cody, better known as Buffalo Bill. Dr. Fung is a 6-page story drawn by Bob Powell under the alias Arthur Dean. This adventure strip features the first appearances of Dr. Fung, Dan Barrister, and Lee Wang. This would later be reprinted in Blue Beetle number 5 at Fox Comics in 1940. The Wrath of Allah is a 2-page text story written by Will Eisner. And Wild Tex Dawson is a 5-page story, possibly written and drawn by Will Eisner, but not confirmed. A Western frontier featuring the first appearances of Tex Dawson and Cactus Kirby, who is the villain. And this would be reprinted later in The Flame number 3 from Fox Comics in 1940. Movie Memos is a 1-page text article drawn by Glenda Carroll featuring movie stars such as Deanna Durbin, Wallace Beery, Stan Laurel, and Oliver Hardy. K5 Spies at War is a 4-page strip written and drawn by Will Eisner under the alias Ned Coe. It's a war spy story featuring the first appearances of K5, Rick Anthony, and The Mask, and it would be reprinted in The Flame number 2 in 1940. Gangbuster Robinson is a 5-page story drawn possibly by Harold Vance, which is an alias for somebody unknown. It's a crime story featuring Richard G. Robinson as Gangbuster Robinson in his first appearance. This would be reprinted in The Green Mask number 3 in 1940. Spark Stevens is a 7-page strip written and drawn by Bob Kane. This adventure strip features the first appearances of Spark Stevens and Chuck Lawton. All American Comics number 2 from All American Comics, May 1939, later to become DC Comics. Features and strips reprinted in this issue include Mutt and Jeff, Toonerville Folks, Regular Fellas, Skippy, Ben Webster, Wiley of West Point, Hop Harrigan, Scribbly, Red, White, and Blue, Spot Savage, Tippy, and beginning in this issue, Ripley's Believe It or Not. The on-sale date of this issue was April 1st, 1939. Hop Harrigan, Mystery Men of Mars, Scribbly, and Red, White, and Blue are all featured on the cover, drawn by John Blummer, Harry Lampert, and Sheldon Mayer. There is a 1-page Scribbly story by Sheldon Mayer. He wrote and drew it. Adventures in the Unknown is a 6-page comic strip written by Carl Claudy with art by Stan Ashmeyer. This early science fiction comic strip features the characters Ted Dolliver and Alan Kane. And there is a 1-page promotional ad for Movie Comics. Large feature comic, series number 1, number 2, Terry and the Pirates, May 1939, published by Dell Comics. This is a black and white comic with color cover. The dimensions were 8.5 by 11 1/3. Newsprint cover, heavy, rough stock on the first 9 issues. This issue is dedicated completely to the comic strip Terry and the Pirates, which is featured on the cover, featuring the characters Terry Lee, Pat Ryan, and Connie. There's 63 pages worth of Terry and the Pirates comic strips written and drawn by Milton Caniff, featuring the characters Terry Lee, Connie, Pat Ryan, and Burma. And these are reprinted from the Terry and the Pirates newspaper comic strip reprints dated 1935 to 36. Terry and the Pirates was an action-adventure comic strip created by cartoonist Milton Caniff. Captain Joseph Patterson, editor for the Chicago Tribune and New York News Syndicate, had admired Caniff's work on the children's strip Dickie Dare and hired him to create a new adventure strip. The daily strip began October 1934 and the Sunday pages began December 1934. In 1946, Caniff won the first Cartoonist of the Year award from the National Cartoonist Society for his work on Terry and the Pirates. The strip was read by 31 million newspaper subscribers between 1934 and 46. Movie Comics number 2, May 1939, published by All American Comics, later to be known as DC Comics. There's a Davis Crippen D-copy pedigree of this book and a Lost Valley pedigree copy. Adaptations include John Ford's legendary western Stagecoach, The Saint Strikes Back, King of the Turf, Scouts to the Rescue Part 2, and Arizona Legion. This book features an Andy Devine photo cover and also art by Sheldon Mayer. Stagecoach is featured on the cover. Jack Adler did airbrushed corrections. Andy Devine is the character featured. And there's a 10-page Stagecoach comic strip written by Dudley Nichols, who did the original screenplay. This Western Frontier strip features John Wayne and Andy Devine, among others. It's airbrushed and lettered over movie photo stills. This is the first comic book appearance of John Wayne, Andy Devine, and John Carradine, among other movie stars. The Saint is a 9-page strip based on the screenplay from Derek Twist, with art by Jack Adler, who did airbrushed corrections in this detective mystery featuring Simon Templar as the Saint. This is the first appearance of Simon Templar the Saint in comic books. The strip is airbrushed and lettered over movie photo stills. Screen Scoops is a 3-page story written and drawn by Walter Galley in a biographical strip featuring the characters Will Rogers, Mae West, Ken Maynard, Andy Devine, John Wayne, Wendy Barr, Neil Hamilton, and others. Stamps and Stars is a short text article featuring the characters Deanna Durbin and Shirley Temple. Scouts to the Rescue is 6 pages, written by Irving Crump, with art by Jack Adler, who did the corrections on this adventure strip. It's airbrushed and inked over movie photo stills. Funny Picture Stories, Volume 3, Number 3, May 1939, from Centaur Publications. The on-sale date was March 27th, 1939. Lucifer the White Devil is featured on the cover. Jigsaw Trail is a 4-page story drawn by Frank Frollo and is reprinted from Funny Picture Stories, Volume 2, Number 1, from 1937. Star Comics Volume 2, Number 4, May 1939, published by Centaur Publications. There is a mile-high pedigree copy of this book from the Edgar Church Collection. The Funnies Ink Shop, Carl Burgos, Paul Gustafson, and Tart Mills all contribute to this issue. The humorous circus trapeze cover is by Fred Schwab. Amazing Mystery Funnies, Volume 2, Number 5, May 1939, published by Centaur Publications. Bill Everett did the classic cover art, which predates his work for Timely Comics and Submariner. There's a Billy Wright pedigree copy of this book. Skyrocket Steel is featured on the cover, drawn by Bill Everett in this early science fiction comic cover. Skyrocket Steel also appears in a 6-page strip drawn by Bill Everett in this early science fiction comic strip, featuring Skyrocket Steel Dodge and Sari Marston, and this is the end of the storyline. Dave Dean is an 8-page strip written by Norman Daniels with art by Fred Gardenier. This adventure strip is reprinted from Funny Pages, Volume 2, Number 2, from 1937. Sandhog is a 6-page strip written and drawn by Paul Gustafson. Dan Hastings is 6 pages drawn by Fred Gardenier in this early science fiction comic strip featuring Dan Hastings and Captain Turk, and is reprinted from Star Comics Number 8 from 1937. Air Sub DX is a 6-page strip drawn by Carl Burgos in this early science fiction comic strip featuring Captain Tim, Prince Batou, Mr. Redden, Zog, and the Batman of Cordano. The classic DC superhero Batman debuts in DC Comics the same month as this comic gives us the Batman of Cordano. Daredevil Barry Finn is a 4-page strip drawn by Tarp Mills, featuring the characters Barry Finn and Little Tommy Gray. Keen Detective Funnies, Volume 2, Number 5, May 1939, published by Centaur Publications. The on-sale date of this issue is March 25th, 1939, and features Spy Hunters on the cover. Single Series Number 6 features Jim Hardy, May 1939, published by United Features Syndicate. This is considered to be Jim Hardy Number 1. This issue features Dick Moore's art. There's a Billy Wright pedigree copy of this book. Jim Hardy was originally from newspaper comic strips distributed by United Features Syndicate, debuting in 1936 by creator Dick Moores. The comic strip Jim Hardy would appear in 5 different comic series and a total of 85 different comic book stories. Crackajack Funnies, Number 11, May 1939, published by Dell Comics. The on-sale date of this issue is March 24th, 1939. There is a Mile High pedigree copy of this book from the Edgar Church Collection and a Lost Valley pedigree copy. Red Rider appears in a 4-page story written and drawn by Fred Harmon, reprinted from the Sunday page reprints of 1938. This is an early appearance of this Western classic character. Don Winslow appears in a 4-page strip written by Lieutenant Frank Martinek with art by Leon Baroth, reprinted from the Sunday page reprints 1937. Speed Bolton Air Ace is 4 pages written and drawn by Al McWilliams. And the Western star Tim Mix is featured in a 4-page story drawn by Jim Chambers under the alias Jim Stevens. Action Comics number 12, May 1939, published by DC Comics. The on-sale date of this issue is March 24th, 1939. There is a Billy Wright pedigree copy of this book. Zaytera is featured on the cover, drawn by Fred Gardenier, and Superman is pictured on the inset on the left. From the Four Corners is a short 1-page story drawn by Sheldon Moldoff. Superman Declares War on Reckless Drivers is a 13-page story written by Jerry Siegel with art by Joe Shuster and possibly Paul Cassidy assisting. This early superhero strip features the 12th appearance ever of Superman and Clark Kent. George Taylor is also pictured but unnamed. Clark Kent witnesses the death of a dear friend of his at the hands of a reckless driver, and when the mayor refuses to deal with the problem, Superman decides to wage out war on these drivers himself. The last panel on page 13 features an illustration by Bob Kane, an ad for his new feature beginning the same month in Detective Comics number 27, The Batman. Scoop Scanlon, 5-star reporter, is a 6-page story drawn by Will Eli in his adventure strip. Pep Morgan is 6 pages written by Gardner Fox with art by Fred Gardenier under the alias Gene Baxter. Here and There is a 1-page strip written and drawn by Paul Gustafson under his alias Gus. Tex Thompson is 10 pages drawn by Bernard Bailey. Now You Know is a short half-page strip drawn by Sheldon Moldoff, and Sheldon Moldoff also draws Odd Facts. Zaytera, Master Magician, our cover feature on this issue, is featured in a 12-page story written by Gardner Fox with art by Fred Gardenier in this adventure/early science fiction comic strip featuring the 12th appearance of Zaytera. Also guests Professor Suswill and the villains Duaru, Zataral, and Milano. Zaytera ventures into an undiscovered dimension only to find himself in the middle of a war. Super Comics number 12, May 1939, published by Dell Comics. Dick Tracy, Terry and the Pirates, Little Orphan Annie, Smiling Jack are some of the highlights of this issue, which was on sale April 7th, 1939. The cover art is by Bill Holman. Dick Tracy appears in a 4-page strip written and drawn by Chester Gould. Comics on Parade number 14, May 1939, published by United Features Syndicate. Tarzan, Captain and the Kids, Nancy, and many more appear in this issue. Abby and Slats are featured on the cover. There's a Mile High pedigree copy of this book from the Edgar Church collection. Feature Funnies number 20, May 1939, published by Quality Comics. This is the last issue of this title. It would be renamed to Feature Comics, with issue number 21 coming out soon. There's a Mile High pedigree copy of this book from the Edgar Church collection. The Bungle Family is featured on the cover, drawn by Ed Cronin. Espionage is a 4-page story written and drawn by Will Eisner under his alias Will Irwin in this spy story featuring the first appearance of the villain Bronislaus. And this comes from the Eisner-Iger shop. Archie O'Toole is a 2-page story, also written and drawn by Will Eisner, this time under the alias Bud Thomas in his child humor strip, featuring Archie O'Toole, The Ghosts of the East Wing, and Max, and this is Eisner-Iger shop material. The Clock appears in a 5-page story written and drawn by George Brenner in this early superhero comic strip. Also Eisner-Iger shop material, and possibly reprinted from Wags, a UK edition. Lollapalooza is a 3-page story written and drawn by Rube Goldberg in his humor strip, reprinted from the Frank J. Markey Syndicate. Gallant Knight is a 4-page story written and drawn by Vernon Henkel in this historical strip featuring the first appearances of Sir Raymond and Lady Alice, and this is Eisner-Iger shop material. Ace Comics number 26, May 1939, published by David McKay Publications. This key issue is the origin and first appearance of Prince Valiant in comic books. Cats and Jammer Kids is featured on the cover, drawn by Joe Musial. Jungle Jim is a 4-page strip drawn by Alex Raymond. The Phantom is 4 pages from writer Lee Falk with art by Ray Moore in the classic adventure jungle superhero strip. And Prince Valiant debuts in a 4-page story drawn by Hal Foster in his historical adventure, which reprints from the first newspaper comic strips. Prince Valiant and the Days of King Arthur is a long-running American comic strip created by Hal Foster in 1937, an epic adventure that is told a continuous story during its entire history, and the full stretch of that story now totals more than 4,000 Sunday strips from King Features Syndicate. Generally regarded by comic historians as one of the most impressive visual creations ever in comic books. The Funnies Number 31, May 1939, published by Dell Comics. On sale date was April 14th, 1939. There is a mile-high pedigree copy of this book from the Edgar Church collection. John Carter of Mars appears in a 4-page story, written based on the original story from Edgar Rice Burroughs, but adapted by John Coleman Burroughs, with art by Jim Gary in this early science fiction comic strip, and this is an early appearance of this character in comic book format. It's adapted from Edgar Rice Burroughs' A Princess of Mars. Crime Busters is a 4-page strip drawn by Al McWilliams, copyright Stephen Schlesinger. The Ghost of Winter Ranch is a 4-page story about Gene Autry, the singing cowboy movie star, and the art is possibly by Al Lewin, in this early appearance of Gene Autry in comic books. Wonderland of Oz is a 3-page story based on the original story by L. Frank Baum, with an adaptation by Walt Spouse, who also did the artwork in this supernatural strip featuring the characters Ojo, Nunky, and Patchwork Girl, and is copyright 1933 to Riley and Lee. Dick Tracy appears in a 3-page text story with art by Chester Gould. Four Aces is a 4-page strip written and drawn by Hal Forrest in an aviation adventure strip. Jack Randall is 6 pages drawn by Norman Fallon in a Western frontier strip adapted from the movie Santa Fe Bound, copyright by Stephen Schlesinger. Tip Top Comics Number 37, May 1939, published by United Features Syndicate. Tarzan is featured on the cover. Captain and the Kids, Little Abner, Jim Hardy, Ellis Cinders are some of the highlight strips of this issue. Issues 31 through 53 are all listed as uncommon in Gerber's The Photojournal Guide to Comic Books. There's a mile-high pedigree copy of this book from the Edgar Church collection. Adventure Comics Number 38, May 1939, published by DC Comics. The on-sale date of this issue is April 3rd, 1939. There's a mile-high pedigree copy of this book from the Edgar Church collection. The cover art is by John Richard Flanagan, a jungle theme featuring a leopard leaping at a man. Inspector Kent is a 6-page strip written and drawn by George Newman in this detective mystery. It's the last appearance of this strip, which had originally appeared in issues of Detective Comics number 19 and 22. Federal Man is 4 pages, written by Jerry Siegel with art from the Schuster Shop in this detective mystery, which features the first appearance of Benny Saunders and Judge Thompson. Todd Hunter is a 4-page strip written and drawn by Jim Chambers. This is the last appearance of this strip. Steve Malone is 6 pages, written by Gardner Fox with art by Don Lynch, a detective mystery featuring the first appearance of Steve Malone, D.A. Professor Doolittle is a 2-page strip written and drawn by Bob Kane, and Bob Kane also gives us a 4-page Rusty and His Pals, an adventure strip featuring the villains Long Sin and Ebenezer Slade. Anchors Away is 6 pages, written and drawn by Fred Gardenier, his adventure strip featuring the villain and first appearance of Wang Ku. King Comics number 38, May 1939, published by David McKay Publications. Popeye is featured on the cover, lifting an elephant. Flash Gordon, Mandrake the Magician, Henry appear as well. There is a Davis Crippen D-copy pedigree copy of this book, and a Lost Valley pedigree copy. Popular Comics number 39, May 1939, published by Dell Comics. There is a Tarzan text story in this issue. Herky is found fishing on the cover. Gangbusters, Tailspin Tommy, Zane Grey's Tex Thorne, and others appear in this issue. The on-sale date was March 31st, 1939. More Fun Comics, number 43, May 1939, published by DC Comics with an on-sale date of March 28th, 1939. There is a mile-high pedigree copy of this book from the Edgar Church collection. The cover art is by Craig Flessel, featuring a kid fighting an alligator. Beanie is a 1-page strip written and drawn by Bob Kane. It's a humor strip featuring the first and only appearance of this strip. Bob Kane introduced this new character the same month he debuted his other new character, Batman, in Detective Comics number 27. Radio Squad is a 6-page strip from the team of Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, their detective mystery featuring the first appearance of the villain, Joe Drake. And in this story, Sandy and his partner dress in drag. Peeking at Pictures is a one-page strip written and drawn by Sheldon Moldoff. He features Johnny Weissmuller, the actor, as Tarzan, and Mickey Mouse. Johnny Law is a four-page strip written and drawn by Will Eli, a detective mystery featuring the villains, the Ape, his gang, and Lin Po. Ginger Snap is a two-page story written and drawn by Bob Kane. And Buccaneer is a five-page strip written and drawn by Bernard Bailey in his adventure strip featuring the first appearance of the villain, Dr. Killman. Mickey Mouse Magazine, number 44. Volume 4, number 8, May 1939, published by Western Publications. Big Bad Wolf is featured on the cover in an image taken from the Practical Pig movie poster. The on-sale date of this magazine was April 7th, 1939. Famous Funnies number 58, May 1939, published by Eastern Color. Still the longest-running comic book on the newsstands. It features a baseball sports cover drawn by Victor Pazmino featuring the character Sam Smithers. Buck Rogers appears in a four-page strip written by Phil Nolan with art by Dick Calkins in this early classic science fiction strip, copyright John F. Dill. And Queenie's a one-page strip from writer-artist Jerry Iger using the alias Bob Bliss.